My name is Luna. I have an older brother who is 7 years older than me. My brother's name is Leo. My brother has always been very good at studying, and he passed the entrance exams for both high school and university and graduated. My parents also praised my brother for that, but perhaps because it was natural for him to be praised like that, his personality has become quite twisted as he grew up. My brother left home soon after graduating from college. When he left, he said to our family, "I can't live in the same house as such a low-level person." He said that with a sneer and left. My parents were shocked by those words and laughed sadly, saying, "He used to always be cheerful, kind, and a good child." They said that. I wasn't sad or anything, I was just pissed off. I don't care what people say about me. Actually, I'm not good at studying or sports, and although my high school is technically an advanced school, it's not that famous. I might be a failure compared to my brother, but thanks to my parents' support, I have the life I have now. Even though I was a high school student at the time, I understood the value of family even if my brother didn't have an ounce of gratitude towards our parents. He called our parents low-level people like that. Since then, I haven't liked my brother very much. I used to admire and respect my brother who could do everything perfectly. He used to dote on me, his younger sister like that. However, now he doesn't have a trace of kindness. Even when I passed the high school entrance exam? What's the point of you going to high school? It's a waste of time. He said that. When our parents scolded him. It's because of your bad education that she turned out like this. He said that and left. I cried and got angry, but my parents gently calmed me down. They always said to me, "I'm really happy that you've grown up to be so kind and good." Even with their support, I was able to pass the entrance exam for a national university without any problems. My job hunting went smoothly as well, and I was able to get a job at my first choice company. Since my mother gave birth to me at an advanced age, by the time I started working and became a member of society, both my father and mother had reached their 60s. By that time, my brother had already gotten married, but he still hasn't brought his wife home. Even though our parents wanted to meet her, he stubbornly refused to introduce us to her, saying, "It's embarrassing to introduce her to such a low-level family." It's been over half a year since I became a working adult and got used to my job. But one day, my mother called me while I was at work. She should know that I'm at work and she has never called me during working hours before. With a bad feeling about this, I left my seat and answered the phone from my mother. "Mom? I'm at work right now." Dad collapsed. Huh? I don't remember what happened after that very well. While still in shock, I explained to my boss that my father had collapsed and been taken away in an ambulance, and probably she took a taxi to the hospital where he was taken. When we arrived at the hospital, my mother was sitting there crying her eyes out. "Mom." I said that and approached her. "Is Dad okay?" "When? He seemed normal this morning, right? Why did he collapse?" I was in a hurry and asked my mother all the questions that came to mind all at once. Even though she must have been anxious too, and it must have been the hardest for her. My mother opened her heavy mouth and said this. "Dad has cancer." Huh? You're kidding, right? I couldn't believe it. My father, who had been so healthy, had cancer. He's already stage 4. It seems he has cancer in his bile ducts, so it's difficult to completely remove it with surgery. My mother explained this slowly while weaving her words together for me. After she finished speaking, she started crying again with tears streaming down her face mixed with sobs. "That means, there's nothing we can do." My mother deeply nodded in response to my question. After that, my mother and I were called by the attending physician and explained the condition again. My father's condition seemed to be really serious, and it was found that it had already spread to another place, so even if surgery was performed, it would only burden his body. I didn't want to accept such a reality, but the doctor's words were straightforward and taught us that this was not a dream. Please discuss with your family whether to undergo chemotherapy treatment to extend life or move to a palliative care ward. That's what we were told in the end. After leaving the room, my mother and I sat on nearby chairs and remained silent for a while. My mother was crying without making a sound. However, we couldn't just keep crying like this. We have to talk about it properly. For now, I'll contact my brother and ask him to come. I said that to my mother and stood up. Then my mother said, "I contacted Leo too, but he doesn't answer the phone or reply to emails." She said that. I got angry. That's how my brother always is. When he has something to do, he gets extremely angry if I'm a little late in contacting him, and he replies very quickly until he is satisfied. But when I contact him from here, he almost ignores me. It's possible that my brother is ignoring me, but this time I can't just leave it alone like this. I persistently kept calling him until he answered after about 10 calls. What? You're so persistent. My brother answered the phone. It's not being persistent. You know that dad is in trouble right now, don't you? You knew from mom's email, right? Why don't you come to the hospital? When I said that emotionally, my brother sighed as if he was annoyed. And then, hey, I'm busy because I'm an elite, unlike you. Besides, dad didn't die or anything. It's an exaggeration. He said that. Don't be ridiculous. It's a situation where anything can happen at any time. Thanks to dad, we have what we have now. How can you say such a thing? I was angry and tears started flowing from my eyes. However, my brother didn't understand any of my feelings at all. It's troublesome, so I'm hanging up. He said that and unilaterally hung up the phone. I was really surprised by my brother's words and actions. Rather than being surprised, I was disappointed. I couldn't believe it. Although I knew that my brother didn't have much family love, I never thought he would be so heartless. I couldn't honestly tell him that my brother spoke to me like this and only said, "My brother seems busy with work." I see. Well then there's nothing we can do. My mother muttered that with a lonely expression. In the end, following my father's wishes, he didn't undergo forced life-prolonging treatment and passed away a few months after moving to a palliative care ward. I reported my father's death to my brother and explained the schedule for the wake and funeral. However, my brother said, "I'm busy so it's impossible. Do whatever you want." He said that and didn't come to either the wake or the funeral. Even my mother was stunned by this. She probably never thought that her son would be so heartless as not to come to his father's funeral. That child really didn't come. After the funeral was over, my mother muttered without changing her expression, "Mom, my brother is no longer family. Let's stop worrying about him." When I said that, my mother smiled and said a yes. The next day, my brother came. He entered our apartment where we live without permission and asked, "What about Dad's inheritance?" What? What are you talking about? You didn't even come to yesterday's funeral. When I said that, my brother glared at me and said, "Shut up, kid." Then my mother, who couldn't stand seeing that, said one thing. "There is no inheritance from your father. The only thing left is this apartment." Huh? That can't be true. My brother, who was getting angry, saw my mother's bank book. There were signs that all the money had been withdrawn before my father passed away. What does this mean? My brother trembled with anger, and my mother told him, "Your father told me to move all the savings to my account in case something happened. This apartment was also changed to my name before your father passed away." She said that. My brother clicked his tongue and left the apartment. I thought my father had done something like that to my brother and thanked him in advance. However, a few months later, my mother collapsed and was hospitalized. The cause was pneumonia. It was already quite advanced. Certainly, recently, my mother had been coughing like she had a cold. However, when she went to a local private clinic where she had been going before, she was told it was just a cold, and both my mother and I believed that judgment completely. When my mother collapsed and was taken to a large hospital, it was found out that she had pneumonia, and at that time she had only 3 months left to live. When you are given a life expectancy prognosis, your body seems to follow it. My mother died in just 3 months and a few days after receiving the prognosis. I regretted it and cried for hours because I couldn't understand why I didn't take my mother to a large hospital by force or why I didn't notice it earlier. Even after reporting my mother's death, my brother never came home. I prepared for the wake and funeral with my aunt, who is my mother's sister. Of course, just like when my father passed away, my brother didn't attend the wake or the funeral. My aunt was very angry about that too, but I thought there was no point in saying anything more to my brother and had already given up halfway. A few days after the funeral, I was organizing my mother's belongings with my aunt. My brother came again. And this time he brought his wife with him. "What about Mom's inheritance? It must be left this time." That was his opening remark. I sighed heavily because I expected it to some extent. Although I reported to my aunt about how my brother acted when our father passed away, she probably didn't think he would be like this. My aunt stared at him with wide eyes as if she couldn't believe it. His wife. Even though it was the first time for me to meet her as someone who could be called a sister-in-law to me, she didn't greet me at all. Even though it had only been a short time since our mother passed away, he didn't even offer incense or put his hands together in front of the Buddhist altar. Brother, at least offer incense for mom and dad. When I said that coldly, he laughed through his nose. What a waste of time. So what about mom's inheritance? He asked me that. My aunt reacted to that. Hey, Leo. You shouldn't say such things. Luna has been through a lot since her sister just died. You didn't even come to the funeral. She said that to him. But he coldly brushed her off. It has nothing to do with you, auntie. Just stay out of this. He said that. His wife followed. Luna, right? You're trying to monopolize your mom's inheritance, right? Sorry, but we won't let you do that. So get out of this house too. She said that. Why do I have to leave? Well, Luna is your younger sister, right? This apartment was renovated a few years ago and it's really clean and spacious. It's also in a great location, close to the station. He said that and told me to leave because he and my brother live there. Don't say such selfish things. And you too, stop talking about inheritance. I couldn't stand it and raised my voice. Then my brother sighed heavily and said, You're still a low-class person. You're just a shameless person who thinks it's okay to raise your voice. Got it? I'll come back in 3 days. Get ready to leave by then. He said that and left with his wife. I couldn't help but cry with frustration. I swore to myself that I would take revenge on my brothers. Then my aunt confirmed that they had left the house and handed me an envelope. Auntie, what is this? It's something your mother left with me. Mom. I quickly opened the envelope and read the letter inside. To Luna, if you're reading this letter, I'm already with your father. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. I'm really sorry for this sudden situation. Even after a long time, I could tell it was my mother's handwriting. I wiped away my tears and continued reading the letter. I'm sure Leo will come to see you when I die. But don't worry. The inheritance that your father gave me before he died is already yours. Huh? I had no idea what she was talking about. I hadn't heard such a story from my mother, nor had I kept any money for her. I'm sorry for leaving you alone. But you've grown up to be such a good child. It's not enough just to be good at studying. Your father and I were so happy that Luna grew up to be such a kind child and lived with us until the end. Thank you so much. I should be the one thanking her. Unable to hold back my tears, they fell onto the letter. Mom. My vision was blurred with tears, but I continued reading the letter desperately. The name of this apartment was changed to your name a little while after your father passed away. I used the seal without permission and signed it myself. Sorry about that. But that's what your father asked me to do. It's going to be tough, but be happy. Stay healthy. That's where the letter ended. My aunt was also crying in front of me as I cried. My sister always wished for Luna's happiness the most. She said that. The envelope contained a bank book in my name that my mother had probably made in the past. A large amount of money had been deposited there, which I guessed was money my mother received from my father. 3 days later, as promised, my brother and his wife came to our house. Look, it's the promised day. Get out quickly. He said that. My sister-in-law, who couldn't stand me not moving, shouted at me. You can't stay in the house inherited by Leo forever. Get out. I calmly replied to such stupid brother-in-law. I inherited this house alone. Huh? My brother-in-law froze at my words. What does that mean? I'm the eldest son. Don't I have the right to inherit first? My brother seemed confused and said something stupid like that. So I told him that this house was already in my name, there was no inheritance from my mother, and all of it was deposited into an account in my name. My brother said. Then give me half of that money. But it wasn't an inheritance or anything like that, it was just money deposited into my account, so there was no need to give half of it to him. This is what your father and mother left for me. You've been saying how low class I am all along, so isn't it a little embarrassing for you to ask me for money? When I said that, my brother turned red. Then his wife said, Hey, that's not what we agreed on. She said that and started arguing with my brother. After listening to the argument between the two, it seems that my brother was fired from his job due to some problems at work, and now he and his wife are living a tough life working part-time jobs. They thought they would inherit this house and the inheritance after our mother passed away, but it was denied. The brother and sister-in-law blamed each other, and it was an unbearable sight. I was really fed up with it, so I said, "Hey, can you leave? This is my house. I can even call the police if you want." They left quickly while complaining. I haven't met my brothers since then. I deleted all their contact information. They never came to visit me again. I still live in this apartment that my father and mother left me. I have a boyfriend and we're planning to get married soon. He understands my feelings and wants to live with me in this house. I want to give my future children lots of love too, just like my father and mother did for me. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel.